Thank you for joining us. And are you actually at the custom shop at the moment? Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm in my cubicle where I do most of my work. I'm running around a lot. I run into all the different departments, the mill, paint department. We have tool rooms, and then
Yeah.
it's it's kind of fun. It's exciting to be able to run around everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of there's lots of things I'd love to talk to you about, of course. Um, but one of the main things is just the kind of like day-to-day process of being a custom shop member and of course a master builder. Because for us with Guitar, of course, we get the other side of it. We get to play your guitars.
Yeah,
Um, and we're huge big fans of the custom shop and everything, but we've got no idea what it's like to actually be there. But now, before we get to that, because this video will be going out on YouTube and whatnot, I figure it might make sense. We all know your name as a master builder, but it might be quite nice to just get a wee bit of background on how you came to luthiering and what your musical tastes are and things as well. Get to know the guy behind the build, if you will.
sure, for sure. I'll try to make it quick. Got my first guitar when I was 13 for Christmas. My dad played drums. My brother wanted the six-string guitar, and my brother, being older, was smart enough to know that uh, talk me into getting a bass guitar so that we could have a complete band.
Nice.
So he starts pointing out the bass guitar and the music, and now I can hear for the first time the bass guitar because I'm looking for it. So I get the bass guitar, and then drums. And then I start taking the thing apart within the first year, and my dad's like, "What are you doing?" And I wanted to see what made it tick. Now I'm getting into high school, and now I want to make a guitar. So at the time, this was in the early '90s. There was no internet, so I rented a book from the library on how to make a guitar, and I joined the wood shop. And I had been goofing around in the garage with dad for many years, so I was familiar with tools. And I made my first guitar when I was 14 in high school wood shop. Like one
Wow.
of the first things I did in high school. And I was like, wow, that was fun. I wish I could do that for a living. And my parents were like, no, you're an idiot. Go to college. So I went to college, and then college is it's not for me. I don't really see myself sitting behind a desk or something. I'm always moving and doing stuff. And I really wanted to make guitars, and I thought, I don't care if I'm broke the rest of my life. I enjoy what I do. So I took a class, Roberto Venn, 21, and then I come back home. I had a few odd jobs working at a cabinet shop because woodworking has always been in my blood. And I got an offer to come interview at Fender 2003. And I didn't have a car at the time. I only had a Harley because I was just working near my home. And I realized that it was about a 100-mile round trip to where from where I lived at the time to Fender. So I did my interview on a Harley with a gig bag sticking up. I ride out to Fender, and they look at the guitar I made, and they say, well, when can you start? And I said, well, I'd like to give my other employer 2 week notice, and then I'll start. So I started 20 years ago in May. This
Wow.
summer, 20 years.
Okay, that's I wasn't expecting you to be showing up to your interview with a Harley and a guitar strapped to your back. That's awesome.
Yeah, the
Um,
first thing I did when they hired me was I went out and got a used pickup truck.
yeah, exactly,
Guess I
exactly.
need, guess I need a car now.
Yeah, for real, for real. Just out of interest, that guitar that you brought along, was it like a sort of like Fender style? Was it like a Strat or a Tele that you'd made?
No, it was similar to uh, Carl Thompson. It had like a carved scroll, and it was ornate with hand done inlays in the fingerboard, and because I
Wow.
wanted to be able to show them what I was capable of.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And so it was like I was kind of a young man at the time, and it was a kind of a show off thing.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
don't I don't
Oh,
necessarily do that anymore.
no, but I mean, it worked. It got you the job.
Yeah.
And so I guess the next part would be that transition from Fender, being an employee at Fender, to sort of like become, is it an apprentice for the custom shop, and then is there a process there?
Yeah, so I started actually on the factory line setting up guitars for the first few months and go through a probation period to make sure because we start really early. We start at 5 a.m. in the factory.
Oh,
And at the time I was starting at 4:30 a.m. and living an hour away, I had to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, which was really difficult when I was in my very early 20s and used to staying up until like 2 o'clock in the morning. And now I have to be at work at that time. Yeah, it was tough. And so I had to make a lifestyle adjustment to go on this career path. And it
yeah,
was difficult. It was really hard to sacrifice hanging out with my friends and going to see concerts. And
yeah,
because they
yeah.
don't do concerts in the morning or in the afternoon, they do them at night.
That's true. Yeah, I had no idea that you would have to be in the workshop so early.
Yeah, we run two shifts here in the factory, and it's traditionally always started really early because it's a manufacturing facility, and it makes sense. And the odd thing is, once you get used to it, it's kind of hard to go back. So now I'm such an early riser that I have so much of my day left. When if I only work 8 hours, I still have a time to do the things that I need to do, and so it's kind of nice to get used to that early schedule.
Yeah, yeah, plenty of time to ride the Harley afterwards, right?
Yeah. No, I got rid of the motorcycles. It's getting too dangerous with cell phones and motorcycles don't mix.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So yeah, the custom shop then, once you became involved with that, what's the progression? I mean, from an outsider, from being presumably you start off as a team builder, and then do you get selected to become a master builder?
It's everyone's path is different. It's based on experience. Like obviously I grew up wanting to do this, so naturally coming into the shop I was gravitation my gravitational pull was towards being a master builder. And other people have maybe have never played or worked on guitars before come into Fender and they start getting a skill set and become really really talented at certain things. And so it really depends on your path your into doing it. Experience helps and the passion. I think that one of the number one thing for all this, anytime we're looking at hiring a new master builder, is we want to make sure that they're passionate about the brand and passionate about what they do, because it's the main driving factor for all of it, for working with artists, for coming up with new models and producing. At the end of the day, you work in a factory. You're a
Mhm.
factory worker, and quite glorified and compensated, but still, you're responsible for manufacturing. So there's a lot of hats, and it takes a great deal of training to get people to the point of being able to transition. And that's why I'm always running around, and I think I'm a perfect fit for it, because I like running around and having the challenges that come at me daily. I don't want to do the same thing every day. And I get new stuff or problems come up. Anybody who's in manufacturing will tell you that the most exciting part is taking care of the issues that rise up to the surface. That's what makes it fun.
Yeah.
And getting creative on how to solve problems, and then there's people involved and machines, and so juggling all those things with artists and then trying to build the perfect guitar makes it for a really challenging yet fun environment.
Amazing, amazing. And we will get to your notion of the perfect guitar pretty soon because I'm very interested in hearing your take on that. But one of my, and you've kind of answered this one, but one of my questions initially was going to be, what is your kind of like, without being too detailed, what's your day to day like? What kind of things do you have to do? But you've just said to me that there are loads of different. Sounds to me like no 2 days are the same. Is that right?
Yeah, but I would say the only thing that the cycle continues, because we work as a master builders, we work in month cycles. So we'll start our new builds at the beginning of the month, and we're wrapping up the 3 month old builds at the end of the month. So we're juggling 3 months worth of guitars from concept to finished good into a case. And what that entails is staying on task and making sure that product is flowing from wood shop, from pulling the material, getting through the wood shop, getting sanded, getting into the paint shop, and allowing the paint shop to have the time that they need to put the material on and let it cure, which is almost the longest process because of the cure time. Because there's a period of time where we can't touch it. It's drying, can't touch it. And then organizing assembly times. So I'm tasked with coordinating that schedule and taking care of my commitment for each month. So it's up to me to make sure that the wood shop's running, I'm sanding, I'm getting the woodwork done that I need to get done, and I check on paint stuff. Sometimes I go down there and mix colors, custom colors for certain customers. Like today we have a dealer visit. We have a dealer coming in. They want to design and submit new specs for cars. So after this, I'm gonna go transition into meeting with the dealer, and we're gonna sit down and talk about new guitars. Then I'll go back to assembling, because right now I'm in assembly phase. I'm assembling the last few guitars for my commitment this month, and I'm waiting for some paint to dry. So this is actually really good timing. And today's one of those days that worked out. Like, I'm literally waiting for paint to dry.
Awesome.
So I have time to have meetings today.
There you go. That's how to time it all together. So this will vary, but like, how many guitars are you working on at any one time?
It really depends. I mean, the way it works is similar to like a mechanic flag hour, or how an accountant would charge for their time. There's certain guitars take a certain amount of time. If you order a generic vintage, nothing crazy Strat, and we're pretty good at making those. We've got some experience, and so those won't have the hours in them similar to a Tele versus say a double neck for an artist. And so I have to basically justify my time here, and I get hours based on each guitar. So if I'm building a double neck, I get to capture more hours because I'm spending more time on the instrument, and it's going to be more expensive versus 57 Strat. It's a lot easier for me to produce. So it really depends on my schedule, and I have to balance that. That's part of my responsibility, is balancing my mechanic or flag hours, or however you want to call them, each month.
Okay, no, that's really interesting. These are all these things that none of us ever really know about the goings on at Fender Custom Shop. So it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
So you've got the room that we're seeing right now behind you. Is that where you actually perform some of the duties of the build, or is that more like an office for you and you go elsewhere to do other things?
It's my room. So all the builders have a cubicle with a door. So I have a door. I'm able to close it so I can have meetings. And then I have all my stuff in here, all my tools. Most of everything I do, I spend 90% of my time in here. Heavy woodworking, I'm out in the mill because that's where the dust collection and the big loud machinery is. And so anytime we need to do that, we have a specific tool room for that. Sanding, all that stuff. And one of the things that's pretty funny about the whole thing, when I built my first guitar, and anybody who does woodworking knows that there's sanding. And I'm like, man, that was awesome. That was so much fun, except the sanding. I didn't like the sanding too much. And any woodworker will tell you sanding's kind of the worst part. I would say 75% of my life, I've been sanding. Because I sand the wood before it goes to paint. Sometimes I'm sanding coats of paint in between coats of paint, and then at the end I'm sanding it and then buffing it. So I spend more. The one thing I didn't want to do, I end up doing 75% of the time.
Oh, good.
I will say I've gotten pretty good at it after.
Yeah, you attracted it. So I wonder, like, I mean, when we look at the custom shop website, and there's all the master builders, I always imagine there's some great kind of like camaraderie of going around and inspecting each other's work and having a laugh about it all. But are you actually all quite isolated and just doing your own thing?
Well, yeah, we're all busy, responsible for our own world of order base, and some guys will have certain things that they're into, so they'll be more into the relic guitars. Let's say like Dale's doing a lot of relic, heavy relic. Uh, it kind of depends. I would say everyone's kind of just like in their room doing their thing, but there's times when the creative mind, I think, needs a break, and there'll be an eruption of laughter and goings on in the shop that usually a lot of people will participate in. And I think it's just a stress reliever, just a burp valve of stress, because it can be very, very stressful when you're juggling a lot of projects and keeping your monthly commitment, making the bosses happy, making the artists happy, making the customers happy, making the dealers happy. And every once in a while, you just need a little, just a break, just a real quick break. And so we do sometimes carry on and act like children, for lack of better words, but it's all harmless, and everyone's usually has a good time with it.
Yeah, it's all necessary. It's all necessary.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess what I'm interested. I mean, this is the first time we've spoken, and I've always noticed through our the guitars we get from Fender Custom Shop, particularly yours, that you're a big Telecaster fan. That is my perception. I don't know if that's true, but um, I was speaking to George earlier, and we were talking about the dealer event and the guitars that you did this year for the dealer event. And I figured that might be a good way to have an example of your creative choices. So, before we get into that, just if you can correct me if I get this wrong, but the dealer event is for it's like a special thing where people like us, like Guitar, and other custom shop dealers are invited to sort of bid, if you like, we see a bunch of master built guitars that are all kind of mostly one of a kind, and they can go from being pretty traditional to being really quite crazy. And I'm thinking of that skull strat that you're involved with this year, which is incredible. And we all express an interest, and then the winners, if you like, are selected, and then they get to buy the guitars. That's pretty much how it works, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a way. It does a couple of different things. It re-stimulates for the dealers to get some fresh product that they haven't already ordered. Most dealers are working in kind of long lead times for master build, so the anticipation for something new to come isn't really quite there unless there's a NAM or some sort of online dealer event in lieu of NAM because of COVID. Well, it just, I think, I would anticipate that the dealers would agree that it reinvigorates the freshness of like, oh, I didn't think of that. It's a way for us to be creative and throw some baloney on the wall. That's one, and that helps us to stay creative and reinvigorates us. And then the dealers look at it and go, oh wow, let's take that, but let's change that. And it's that coexistence that is what drives, because we always say that the dealer and the builders are like partners, vendor like partners, and we need each other to kind of back and forth to get that cadence, and it helps both of us. And then there's a way for the dealers to have something fresh on their wall that they can get now and potentially sell through. And then there's usually an element of because it is an event, it's unique, that can add a little bit of sizzle to the instrument that's hanging on the wall. Like, hey, this was a one-off deal that this builder put together, and we have it.
Mm-hmm.
There's some exclusivity there, so I don't see anything but good coming out of it, and it, like I said, it just helps reinvigorate everybody during a stale time, which is typically, at least in the States, from what I understand, this is the time of year when sales are just kind of like loady.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a timing to that helps kind of hammer it, and I think that is it's by design.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so, to your your two, the ones that I made a note of, one was the California, the Streetwoods, the Redwood Telly, and the other was the Journeyman Strat with the skull on it. So maybe starting with the Telly, in account of the relatively unusual timbers, was that the what, well, rather than me suggesting, what was the idea behind that particular guitar?
So a few years back, we started with that Surf Green collection, and how that conversation started was a bunch of us guys standing here right by my area, and Dennis said, "Hey, remember one year we were all going to do this thing, and it was from the crew that was way back, right?" Well, we said, "Well, why don't we do that now? It would be kind of fun." And it was right first year of COVID, and we just needed something a creative outlet. So we said, "Well, let's everybody just do a Surf Green guitar. Here's the parameters." And it was, again, it was special, unique. It was fun. Everybody had a different take on it, and you ended up with this massive collection of Surf Green, and it was overwhelming to complete it. And we all just kind of like, "Wow, that was fun. Let's do that again." And that's when Hot Wheels came, and so this go around again. Dennis said, "Hey, I was working with this local guy that he cuts down trees all the time that are the same species that we use for building guitars, but they're just the difference being they're grown here in Southern California." And we thought, well, that'd be kind of cool to use some kind of backyard wood to make guitars out of. So again, it was just a way to kind of bring everybody together and work together as a team, and everyone's got their own different designs going on, and that's kind of how that came about.
Okay, cool. And am I right in saying there's eucalyptus in that particular build as well?
Yeah, that was the neck choice for my build. Yeah, and it's just looking at the different materials and seeing what would be useful and stable, because it's beauty is only one aspect of wood, and they have a lot of other properties and characteristics that can either make them really good or really bad for making guitars out of. So there's a reason why we use the wood that we do.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's like the time honored kind of like, we know that alder and maple and all the rest of it, but when we start talking about redwood and eucalyptus, and then I'm thinking on top of that as well, if it's an otherwise it's a relatively kind of like traditional looking telly, but do you then make a decision about the types of pickups that are in it that are a certain output that are going to, do these things all have to kind of like balance themselves in your mind to make it successful?
Yes, absolutely. But I've messed around with materials for years, different materials, odd materials, and it's always been part of um, my way of deconstructing the myth of what actually is making the tone. And wood is definitely a part, and I always talk about tone as like a pie chart. And wood is definitely a piece of pie, but how big? Sometimes I feel like the emphasis on certain materials is bigger than it should be based on maybe myth or terminology and stuff that we've heard and seen online. And so anytime I'm doing these projects like guitars made out of cardboard or made out of this funky materials, is to see it still sounds like a Strat,
Mhm.
and to me, a bigger piece of the pie is the pickup, because it's an electric guitar. It's the pickup that's driving the majority of it. Now, there's different flavors that are in there, but in terms of tone, that's kind of where it's at for me. And so what I did was I just took a 63 Telecaster and I changed everything in wood, but not the pickup, not the hardware. I wanted to keep all that the same because that's a benchmark that everyone can relate to, is a 63 Telecaster. And I'm assuming that some of the other builds from the other guys were going to be vintage spec guitars with different wood. So it's a true testament of what, if you plug in one of those street wood guitars versus one you have hanging on the wall that's a 63 spec or whatever, and then you can compare them and see what the difference is. And sometimes I wonder if your eyes, because we eat so much with our eyes, sometimes we hear with our eyes too. as silly as that sounds. And when you see a Strat, you hear a Strat. You see a Tele, you hear a Tele. But when you listen to records or listening to streaming music, you can't see it, and it's harder to tell what it is.
Sure.
So it's almost worth it to play the part and say, okay, well, put a blindfold on. Can you tell the difference between a Strat and a Tele? And you can usually tell it between a different brand because the other brands have a different style pickup.
Hmm.
Again, we're going back to the pickup as being a source of a great deal of the tone, man. But when you get into the fine details, is it a Strat? Is it a Tele? Yeah, you've nailed it. It's a single coil, but is it a Strat? Is it a Tele? Is it a Bassmaster? You know? And then it becomes an exercise of how much your eyes play a role in all this stuff versus your ears. And we think we're using our ears, but so much of it we're using our eyes.
Yeah, yeah. The classic thing I always think of with that is Jimmy Page back in the day of the first couple of Led Zeppelin records. When you don't know any better, you just picture him with his Sunburst 59 Les Paul, and then
Yep.
once once you know it's a Telecaster, you hear it. But I don't think that makes itself all that obvious to people who don't know it before that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's almost unbelievable because the association's been there for so long that we don't see anything but the other brand, you know.
Yeah.
I get bonuses, by the way, for every time I mention another brand without saying its actual name.
Excellent, but you just say the other brand as often as you want. Okay. So, talking about, and I very much agree with what you're saying about people hear with their eyes. There's never been a truer statement when it comes to guitars, and and with that in mind, the other fantastic guitar was that Journeyman Relic with the skull graphic on it, and wow, was that a concept? I just want to see an amazing skull graphic on a cool Strat, or how'd that go?
That started last year or the year before when I did a project with that same artist, David Kassan. He's just I was scrolling on Instagram one day and I saw some work that he was doing. And he's an oil artist on canvas, and they look like photos. And I was blown away. So I hit him up. I was like, "Hey, would you want to do a guitar? I think your work is amazing." And we're always tasked with finding new talent to kind of bring to the table. And again, it's another one of those relationships where, you know, by building a guitar with him painting it, I bring him into my world, and then I can take guitar into his world, and we ended up becoming friends through the process. And so he's like, "Can we do another one?" I was like, "Yeah, but let's do a Strat because everybody wants to see a Strat with it." And I love Telecasters. That's why the first one it was a Telecaster body, and then it was just he was this really nice guy, easy to deal with. I sent him the bodies, it's quick, and his work is so beautiful. So I plan on working with him. We're already talking about doing another.
Oh, cool, cool. And does
Yeah.
he? Do you literally? I mean, I'll probably. I don't know whether we can get a photo for it for when this goes on YouTube or not, but people can Google the, David Kassan skull Telecaster, and they'll see it. It's on the finish and it's on top of the pickguard. Did you send him the guitar with the pickguard, and did he just paint over the entire thing?
Yeah. Yeah. So I did the base color, and I put a little bit of base color on the pickguard for him, and then I actually line everything up where it needs to be, and then send it to him. And then he's able to do everything he needs to do. And then he can take the guard off and finish the artwork underneath the card. That way there's no witness mark of where it ends and stuff. Because things move around over time, and so it's important that happens. So yeah, it makes for a stunning piece, you know. And I think for a lot of us builders, we call them in the shop, we call them art guitars, because the Strat's already like a piece of art just the way it is. I mean, you can hang a Strat on a wall and impress your friends when they come in. Art. And then you put art on top of it. Now you got art on art. And that makes for a super impressive piece of art. Functional art. You can play it, but don't play it, please.
No, totally. I love that witness marks. That's so true. Now, one of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about, which is kind of everything that I'm saying right now because it's a very interesting subject. But you've made some guitars for worldwide legends, like proper like rock royalty. Um, amongst them, the two names that caught my eye were Bono and Keith Richards. So, well, take Bono first, for example. When an order like that comes through, is there direct contact and conversation between yourself and the likes of Bono? How does that work?
Usually not. Usually the bigger they are, the more layers there are in between us. And that one was from, I was early on in my career here, and I had built a bass for Adam, and um, they wanted a guitar for Bono, and they had liked some of the telly stuff I was doing, and the request was for a super lightweight guitar. And I was making these hollowed out at the time, hollowed out Telecasters that were really featherweight. And they came to me and said, "Since you're already doing that, can you make one, but put it in the Irish Falcon colors for Bono?" I was like, "Well, yeah, that's what I'm here to do, man." So that's how that one went down. And then, of course, weeks later, I get the photograph. It's a pretty stellar photograph of him, like, kind of leaning down and getting into it, and that's kind of like the extras, the sugar on top of what I do. It's a beautiful moment, something I get to keep, but say I did that. But it honestly, it's just sometimes people just bring you a request. We sometimes joke around, talk about how we're like short order cooks, like when you go to like a cafe or something, and there's a little round thing with all the little orders on it, and it's like, okay, here's your eggs, and here's your, and um, sometimes those eggs are famous, and the toast is, super super famous.
I like that.
This is how it is. Sometimes you
Yeah,
land on.
sometimes.
The other stuff is sometimes approached. They'll come to us, and then there's the other aspect of the job of actually artist relations and working with artists and figuring out what it is they want from the instrument. A lot of times with those established uh, artists, they are looking to replicate something that they already have because it's dying, and we need to provide them one that sounds pretty much the same so that they can keep using that.
Yeah, that's actually, Paul, that's one of the things that you've read my mind there because you did Nile Rodgers' Hitmaker guitar, didn't you? So
yeah,
what are the challenges then? And for example, Bono didn't have a thin line telly before you made it for him, and he just had that guitar. But Nile Rodgers has had this long relationship with this one particular guitar, and now you are tasked with recreating that to some degree. What are the challenges there compared to the other one?
They're pretty much the same every time. Is there's the look, the feel, and the sound. I guess you could throw in the smell too, but you would have to be in the room with the thing to tell,
Yeah.
or at least have the two to compare. Sensory overload. I would say that one was really tough because I thought the hardest part was going to be the pickups, to make the pickups sound right. I got that really close from the first few darts that I threw. We were able to tackle that really quickly. However, the neck shape, because he's played that guitar for so long and he's spent so much time with it, he could feel 10 thousandths on the neck, which is like a human hair, thin like mine. And so I had spent more time reshaping the neck to get all the nuance into the neck because it had lumps and things in there. And normally, from a manufacturing perspective, we want things to be seamless and no lumps. Lumps are bad. So introducing those was something that was difficult to get out of my box of make it perfect. And the asymmetry of a neck can sometimes be counterintuitive to what I'm doing because I'm trying to clean things up and stuff. So yeah, the most difficult part for me with Niles' guitar was the neck. And so I ended up making like 3 different samples and scooping them out and stuff. And at the end, he it was cool. He didn't say anything. He was playing the third one, and there was other people in the room, and he just kind of looked up and just kind of gave me the nod, like it was good, you know. And it was like, oh yes, we did it.
Amazing. What a moment. What a moment. That's actually
Yeah.
something else that you touched on it a wee second ago, but I think it's an important one to kind of to bring back those moments when you work so hard and you labor over these particular instruments for these particular people, and then you see the photograph, you see the TV show, you see the YouTube video of these people playing them. How does that feel?
That's it's one of my favorite. Sometimes it means more than the paycheck. Um, I've always loved the way a guitar looks on stage with the lights shining off the strings, and how that looks. And as weird as that sounds, so when they say, I don't know how true it is, that a mother becomes a mother the day she conceives, and a dad becomes a father the day the baby is born. And that always stuck with me with the guitar, not not with babies, but with guitars. That it's not a guitar until it's done, and I see somebody playing it, and it's like, oh, there it is. That's it. So then I become the father of that.
Amazing, amazing. No, that makes a lot of
But
sense.
that is a beautiful part of what I do. It's you know, it's just, again, that's one of the perks of the gig is to have that, and I've never, it's never grown old. It's something I truly love, and um, I don't take it for granted.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. Do you have a particular like probably like you make guitars all the time, and most of them aren't like visible. They'll just go to guitar players who are buying them. But of the ones that we might see on stages and so on, are there any particular ones that have stood out to you that of your own builds that you've loved?
Um, yeah, yeah, there's some for sure. Yeah, there's one in particular that I made for Keith. It's a black double bound, and he ended up naming the guitar, which for him is huge. That means it's part of the collection, the rolling collection. And he wrote a song with it, and I was like, "Whoa, that's pretty cool." You mean to tell me I'm on a record? Um, so I'd say that's probably right up there with one of the coolest, the most successful child I have.
Yeah, that's got to be. That's got to be. That's a win. That's a win. Now, that's an interesting dovetail there because if it's a double bound black telly, then that is already pretty much on my dream spec. I love bound tellies. I think they look amazing, but nobody cares what I like. What's your like? Just I know you'll change this every day, but today, what's your dream spec Telecaster that you would make for yourself?
I I, I love double bound tellies. They're kind of weird because like the binding digs into your arm and stuff. I don't care. I just love the way they look. They're so cool. I make a lot of them. Maple. I would probably be a maple neck, like a 53 soft V maple neck. But just there was so much of it that was right from the beginning. I wouldn't change much.
Yeah,
I think that's why I love it so much, because it was just, you don't need to do anything. You just plug it in. Perfect.
you got it. You got it. So in that case, what about any particularly strange requests you've had for a custom build that you've been able to do?
Oh, I know there's some. I'm trying to think of the more recent ones. Um, I think thin line Stratocasters are weird because they never existed, and I think there's a reason why they never existed. Um, those are always odd to me, and I've actually built some weird stuff for fun, and that baloney never sticks. It's not acceptable. There's certain things you can and can't do to the Strat and the Telecaster. For instance, the Telecaster, you can put any neck pickup in you want besides the original, and it'll make it better. Um, and then in a Strat, you can play with the bridge pickup. But
Mhm.
that's about the extent of it. You can change the colors. It's Mr. Potato Head. for the most part. But the Strat, it has a much deeper fan base, and it's more respected, I think, than the Telecaster. So if you'll get more boos from your audience if you're doing too much to a Stratocaster. Me making a thin line Stratocaster, it's strange. I'm sorry, Eric Johnson, but it's weird. I personally don't like that.
Fair enough. Fair
I think
enough.
it's okay for a Telecaster because it was a vintage spec. It made sense. It's flatter, but with all the Strat contours and stuff, it's hard to build for one, and it just doesn't make sense because it's not. It's just all the shaping doesn't. There's not resonance going on that normally would be happening and that you would consider to be a resonant guitar.
It just makes you unhappy, and that's fair enough. So yeah, I mean, I've only got one more question. You've been so good with your answers, Paul. It's been a fascinating conversation. But yeah, the last one is just are you up to anything in particular cool that you're working on right now that you can share any little fun details with us?
I do have a couple projects coming up that I'm not allowed to talk about, but those will be coming soon. I recently finished a double neck and a couple other kind of quirky guitars. And then right now, I think I'm just getting caught up on back order and getting ahead of my projects that will be releasing soon, probably in the next 12 months or so. And there's a couple of them. So
Okay.
18, I can say. Everything else is just kind of customer orders. I didn't see anything too extravagant. Maybe I think the weirdest thing I have coming up right now is a dealer wanted to order a Starcaster.
Oh.
And I was like, a Starcaster? You can get an original for less than it would cost for me to make it. Why would you want to do that? He's like, I know, but just make it. I'm like, okay, so that's about the weirdest thing I have coming up right now, Starcaster.
Amazing. Well, we'll look out for that, and yeah, and we'll let you get back to your busy day. And thanks for giving us the time. It's been a really, really good conversation. Thank you very much, Paul.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Cool, man.